Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for SF Doc Fest. The festival will be running from June 1st through 11th uh, electronically, which is how our audience is joining us today via their computer screen, as well as in person at the historic Roxy Theater. Thank you so much to our filmmakers joining us today from the shorts program Oddball Adventures. We are very excited to be able to present your films that show unique perspectives and tell your stories in a really interesting way. I'm so glad to get to share these truly quirky, fun, inspirational films. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I I would love to kick things off by inviting you to introduce yourself and let us know the title of your film and what your role was on it. And I'm going to kick it off with Edie. Hi, Edie.
Hi. So my film was Blush, An Extraordinary Voyage, and I'm the director of the film.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Sinead. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm Sinead. I directed Valentine, which is a short about working on OnlyFans during the pandemic.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Jose. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jose Ricardo Garcia. I'm the writer, editor, director of the ADX2 controversy.
Thank you so much. Hi, Alex. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Alex. I'm the director and editor of Crush the Wrestler.
And I don't know if you really need an introduction, but Crush, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, and thanks for having us here. And Mom Crush, the subject of Crush the Wrestler.
Thank you so much. It's a chicken or the egg, right? Which came first? Thank you so much. I would love to now just find out, like, how did you all stumble upon these stories, or in Crush's case, allow the story to be told? And Edie, I'm going to come back to you. Like, how did this fantastical, beautiful stop motion space rock cool film come to be?
Well, the character Rai is actually my sister, and her best friend Fatu is Fatu, and they I just always loved how they communicate together. It's like half Finnish and half English, and it's like they have this super fun way of being with each other. And I was just like talking to them, should we make some kind of film? And then we talked about Fatu's situation with his family not accepting the way he wants to be, and then they were talking about this, that they would go to the local grocery store with makeup on, and it was super nerve-wracking for Fatu. And then we talked about it, that could be the film.
It's very cool, very inventive way to tell kind of a touchstone moment in somebody's life like that. So thank you so much. Sinead, I would love to hear about kind of your access point too, right? You use your animation style in a really kind of dreamy way of talking about something that's like very personal and kind of against traditional capitalism, and it's really exciting. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Well, we started working on this film in December of 2021. So COVID was still very much a thing. I was staying with my family and wanting to keep them safe, but also, keep producing content and staying creative and staying working. So we were thinking about, what other work happens digitally, as, everybody's life turned more digital. So I met Nastia through another friend, and she's a wonderful person and has a great way of talking about her life and kind of how she was working during the pandemic. And yeah, the animation style was a collaboration with a local animator in Austin. And Nastia is like a very effervescent kind of stream of consciousness narration that she lends to the piece. So we wanted an animation style that matched that and could kind of keep up with her train of thought. But we wanted it to be kind of the VO and the animation style to work in harmony to kind of represent the person that the film's about.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Jose, you take this kind of like historical narrative and wrap it up in such an interesting filmmaking bow. Can you talk about how you found the story and how you decided to tell it in this way?
Yeah, so this is a story that is typically told during the onboarding process. So I work at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the small agency inside the Department of Commerce. And the ex-chief of staff, well, chief of staff back then, came to us because he used to talk about it in the onboarding process. And he's like, can you do a 2-minute short movie so I don't have to talk anymore, basically. And then when I was started doing all the research, I found it was such a big story, and it went from a 2-minute assignment to a 23-minute piece. So obviously we didn't have a ton of video of that time. We had some images, and that's where the idea came for the reenactments. We had a few interviews with some people, well, one person that was still alive, and then the family members of the director of the bureau at the time. So we didn't have enough for me to tell a compelling story, and that's where the idea for the reenactments came to be.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Alex, I mean, I'm sorry, I just have to like, gosh, there's something so empowering and just like kind of hot about what Crush does. So like I understand why you wanted to tell this story. But can you talk about like how you found it, how you went about kind of bringing this to light?
For sure. So back in 2019, I was bored one night and I went to look at freelance film jobs on Craigslist. Now, when I started freelancing, I used to get occasionally a real job off there, but most of it are scams that are hilarious. So I was like, I'm going to go look at some hilarious scams tonight. And as I'm scrolling through, I see a listing that was, I believe, fetish wrestler seeks cameraman. And I thought, that sounds awful. I gotta apply to this. I'm figuring it's on Craigslist. It's going to be a Craigslist job, and I'll just get a hilarious story out of it. I basically did it as a joke to amuse myself, but I applied seriously. And I got a response from Crush, and he goes, hey, check out my site. Just want you to be comfortable with what I do. And I could tell from the way he typed his email and the content on the site, like there's blog posts about the history of wrestling. He's very articulate. This guy knows what he's doing. He's a real wrestler. It's not some guys who are joking around, just like throwing each other and giggling. Like, this is a real trained guy who takes this very seriously. So I thought, okay, I stumbled into something that should be good. On the day that I went to shoot, I spoke to him face to face for the first time. And I'm just thinking, this guy is so kind and articulate. I was taken aback because I don't know what preconceived notion I had, but you just may not expect that when you're walking to a fetish wrestling match. And then we go, all right, let's shoot. And he flicks a switch in his head, transforms into this gruff wrestler, and him and his opponent beat the shit out of each other for a good hour. And it's impressive. It's so athletic. And by the end, I'm handheld, I'm swooping around, and I'm probably way more tired than they are after this hour. They took maybe 2 breaks. I couldn't believe it. And for those who just watched the movie, it's the match with the green sock choking the guy out. And I'm telling you, a few minutes into this shoot, I went, I need to know everything about this guy, because this is the greatest accident of my life to stumble into this job. So yeah, by the end, I just said, hey, Crush, let's go get some beers and just talk about life and things. And in the back of my head, I go, I got to pitch this guy a documentary. I got to pitch doing this to him. And that's a big deal coming from me, mainly because I've never met a person in my life where I thought I need to film them and make a doc about this subject right now. It's the first time that's ever happened. And yeah, now we have Crush the Wrestler.
That's so awesome. And I love also, like, I think I need to go on Craigslist and look up freelance videographer jobs, because I'm very curious about especially in LA, like what rabbit hole I might fall down. But there's something really interesting about kind of the role of being the one in charge, right? But like as a filmmaker and Crush, you exude this confidence and trust in the way that you go about working, where I understand why your like scene partners trust you. And I mean, you know, you guys are kind of putting your lives in each other's hands at some point. I was wondering if you could talk about kind of if there was like a role reversal almost with Alex, right? Like it goes from him being somebody that you employ to create your art to allowing Alex to kind of take your story into his hands and manhandle, I'm gonna say it, manhandle, and mold into this story. Can you just talk about what you're feeling as you're like, yeah, let's do this, or what were your parameters for allowing your story to be shared?
Yeah, it really did come down to trust and the comfort level I had with Alex. When we met, I had quite a few responses to my camera person wanted ad. My previous one moved out of state, and I had a surprising amount of responses. But Alex has stood out because he was very specific and he understood and appreciated the subject matter. And we set up our first shoot. That's how we met. And when we did go out for drinks, I don't know, a few days after that first shoot, I could tell that he understood and appreciated what it was that I do, or what it is that I do. And he was coming at it from an angle that didn't feel exploitive or prurient or a way in which it had been pitched to me in the past. So I had a few people offering me like little project ideas, a documentary or a mini movie, and no one quite got it. And I didn't like where they were coming from, but Alex, it was totally clear and appreciated what I was doing. And so it was a matter of trusting him and just surrendering to that process we undertook in making the film.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna switch things up. I think I'm gonna come to Jose, and then I'm gonna talk to Edie, Sinead, and Alex together, because I think that there's some themes that kind of you all could help elaborate upon. But Jose, could you talk a little bit more about the way that you you brought a sense of humanity to your story, right? Like, as you said, like, sorry, your film started off as like kind of a industrial in some ways, right? Like it had like a very specific purpose for your job. But I think through your research and the way you tell your story, you kind of feel like you have a sense of the people behind it, what they felt like they had at stake throughout this like process of like fighting the power, and then like maybe actually being kind of dupes, like a precursor to Theranos or something. But can you talk about kind of how you shaped your story to show like a more human angle to it?
Yeah, so part of it is, I mean, obviously this is a story that is very important to us. But once the Aston family came on board, then it's not just a legacy to everybody that has come before us and that work now and in the future, but it's also a love letter to the family. They were amazing. But what the funny thing is, when I was doing the research, I was actually on the side of the quote unquote bad guy. It's not a bad guy. And I wanted the audience to take the same journey I took, which at first I was like, oh, this guy is making sense. Like maybe it's big government against small entrepreneur. But then after I kept doing the research, started poking holes in the story and finding things like, oh, this makes sense. So I really wanted the audience to take, it's kind of like a rise and fall story, but at the same time it's the opposite. So the two stories cross together. So you think you're following this guy, at the end it flips on you. And I wanted the audience to take that same journey like I did, and I didn't want to play anybody like good or bad or this or that. I wanted everybody to play the way that I think Jess Ritchie, I think he really thought it worked. So when I was working with the actor, that's how we approach it. It's like he does think this works. He's fighting for his family, he's fighting for his business. And then in the side of Aston, that was very challenging to make him a hero, so to speak, because he's so quiet, he's so reserved. He's not your typical protagonist. He's not the one driving the story with actions, but there's that quiet integrity that he carried. That was the thing that I wanted the actor to portray the most. because that is beautiful. You know, he could have fought and argue back as the Senate and the Congress and the president, stating like, hey, you guys don't know what you're talking about. But he trusted that science will win at the end, and it did. And thanks to that level of professionalism, he gained a lot of respect and allow us to have a campus like we have today and allow us to do the science that we do today. If he had fought back, maybe that would have never happened. So that's why the humanity side was so important.
That's awesome. That's a really good point. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
I would now like to talk about the trust and representation, right? Edie, Sinead, and Alex, you're telling stories that are somebody's very personal journey. Can you talk about the approach that you took with your subject? I mean, obviously, like Edie, you're like your sister and like a close family friend, but still, like they had to be like, okay, I trust you to use this audio and tell this story. Like, how did you approach that and like treat that throughout your filmmaking process?
Yeah, I think there's no shortcuts or simple answer maybe, but well, it helps a lot that it's stop motion. so there's no camera around, and it makes it easier to talk really intimate things. And when we were shooting, we were like discussing that, not shooting, like recording. We were discussing that I will use only the first names, so there's some anonymity in the story. But when the film was finished, Patu was like, I want it out, and I'm like so proud of it, and it turned out really well. But I think it's a process that just discussing it from day one to the end and after, and like yeah, something like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, like making sure that you're keeping the lines of communication open and checking in with your subjects. It's really lovely, and I love the response, right? Because especially like with a sibling or younger people, they could be like, "No, I hate it now," or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that they responded to it, because it's really it's so freaking fun. So thank you.
Thanks.
Sinead, how was that for you? Right, like you even touch upon these like kind of issues even within the context of your film, right? Like the sharing of one story, but also like this kind of need for anonymity. Can you talk about what that process was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. In my like research phase of this project, I interviewed a lot of people, all via Zoom, which was an interesting way to work and build kind of a relationship with someone over the computer, which now we're all very used to. But at the time, I was like, I don't know how this works, because I think when interviewing someone, the connection you get in the room and the ability to, listen and share your work and your story and your process with them, and collaborate is so important. And kind of what we discovered was that we could still have and develop that relationship. But very similarly, I mean, my number one thing was making sure that Nastia was comfortable. I ended up deciding that focusing on one subject made the most sense, that it's, she's one person and it's one individual story of online sex work, and it's not meant to be representative of everyone's experience. It's not meant to be representative of the way all people feel about online sex work, but she approaches it as kind of a combination of life, work, and art, and a way of showcasing the art she's been doing for a really long time. And to her, kind of the worst part of her job is the stigma that's put onto her, that other people believe that she should keep it secret, or, it's other people's reactions to her work. She's very comfortable and she enjoys her work. And she's also, fluid, and she's like, this is what I'm doing now, I'm enjoying it, and maybe someday I'll be doing something else. But for right now, I'm happy. I'm, making money, and it's a good life, which is something I think most of us aspire to enjoy our work and have that kind of balance that you can kind of construct your own life. So yeah, I think the focus on trust and making sure she was comfortable, keeping her in the loop, making sure she was comfortable with the way she was being represented through animation, since it is constructing kind of a different version of someone. So all of that was kind of a collaborative process, but she is also an artist and a filmmaker, so she understood that process, and was very open to me as a director approaching her story in a way that wouldn't be the way she might tell her story, but kind of together we were able to make something that represented both of us. And that was important to me, to make sure that it felt true to her and that the process was comfortable and really built on trust.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Alex, you kind of had this interesting position, right? Because in some ways you already had access to the subject in a way that was out of context from the project that you are sharing with us here today, right? So like, how did you go about those conversations of like how you could shape a documentary about this, but while also like having had access to moments where you're kind of like not on the record, if that makes sense, right? Like you're a practitioner, and so you're looking at it from one angle in that way, but you're also telling and shaping a story. So what was that process like for you?
Well, I think it was just a matter of being as upfront immediately about my concept for what this project could be. Crush and I had alluded to how we met a couple days later after the first shoot, where I went in with the idea, I'm going to pitch him this project. And I said, I'm just going to put it all on the table. Let's just be so open and honest and see where it goes. And, after we were together, I think maybe 4 or 5 hours, a lot of beers in, and we just talked about everything. We went deep on a lot of subjects. And I think we could both tell there was a mutual trust and mutual interest in how this could be done. And I also was very upfront about how the idea of focusing on the exploitation or prurience, what this could be, it's just not, that's not interesting to me at all. I don't think that defines Crush. I don't think that defines the concept of fetish, to be honest. And I said, there's a way to show what you're doing as the art that I really believe it is, that I don't think people naturally will think about when they hear the phrase fetish wrestling or the concept of a fetish scene in any respect. So, presenting that idea, I think it was obvious. I hope it was obvious right away that like I wasn't going in to laugh and show this as being like, isn't this crazy? Like that's the least interesting part of it. And a concept that I felt was important was, how can we take the idea of a fetish wrestler or just a fetish in general and just completely normalize it and go through the intellectual process via Crush's words in this case of how his approach to it and how it's a completely normal thing. There's not anything prurient about, there doesn't have to be. It's not, you're not, what's the word? It's not a deviant behavior is what I'm trying to get at. And I think once you can bring an audience into that, they can, and with a subject who is as articulate as Crush is, you can bring someone along on this journey where they will go, I never thought of fetish or sexuality in this way before. And I think it could actually show someone a new perspective on this whole thing. And so said right away, let's just be open. Let's talk about everything. I said, if there's anything off limits that you don't want to get into, it's totally cool. And more or less, he was just like, yeah, let's just talk about it all. Let's just see. And then, we did our interview, which was scheduled and took place on March 13th, 2020. So the last potential day we could have done that for a very long time. I think I have 5.5 hours of footage. We took a few breaks, but we went deep on everything. And the man is just so open and honest and inspiring. And it was a pleasure. And I think I'm very happy with how I could show his persona to the world.
Awesome. Yes. Well, I think I want to talk about something that you were just saying, right? You're portraying it as non-deviant, right? And actually the way that it comes across to me and Crush's approach to his work, and Crush, this is for you now, is therapeutic. There's something that I find very therapeutic about the way you approach your clients who request these specific videos. And like clinical isn't the word I want to use, but like highly professional in the way that you work with your screen partners to achieve imagery that is therapeutic for what is being requested of you. And I was just wondering, like, overall, if you could talk about your approach to how you create your art that has been like requested essentially for somebody to kind of scratch that itch.
Very good question. So I approach it in a way that I want for the characters, and sometimes even the names we choose for them, to tap into something that resonates with people somehow, or that might be timely in some way. Like I had when in 2015, 2016, I created a character named Donald J. Then around the same time, I had a character named Stan's Torum. So all of these like similar sounding names. So I'm on one hand trying to tap into the political part of things. Sometimes I did have custom commissions where a customer or a fan might have something very specific in mind that they wanted me to enact for them. And a lot of the time I would just come up with these ideas myself. Where they come from, who knows what. But what I love about what Alex did, alluding to what you were saying earlier, is he took something so specific and on the surface, something that could be seem so foreign and unusual and off-putting and even frightening. And he found a way to weave a story together that in the end, I think, makes people see everything differently. So it's not really about me. And I had been told it from the start, and I knew this wasn't where he was coming from. This is not a documentary about me per se. He made it much bigger and broader than that, which is very difficult to do. But that's what in my opinion, a true artist can do, is to take something so specific and make it something that people can get something from. And he did that in 14 minutes brilliantly.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for letting the story come to light, because I don't know, it's really fun to see and really inspiring to see the way that all the filmmakers are kind of wielding their craft to tell stories that are unexpected in the best kind of way, where you get a glimpse at something where you can take a deeper look. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to our audience for tuning in, for giving the festival your delicious money, and giving us a little bit of your brain space to inhabit some of these stories. So thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.